Hello, our topic is the zodiac sign Leo, Leo the lion, and the lion is the king of the jungle. First, I'm going to tell you the usual interpretation of Leo, and then I'm going to present you a slightly different interpretation of Leo, and this slightly different interpretation is supported by research. The usual interpretation of Leo is that Leo is regal and proud and charismatic. To get a good feeling from what Leo is about, let's think about the candidate for president in the United States as I am making this in December 2015, Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump is a controversial person. You might love him, you might hate him, but don't focus, I suggest not focusing so much on whether you like him or don't like him. Think about his personality, because any zodiac sign can be positive or negative in its expression. He has the very end of Leo rising. If he was born any later, he would have Virgo rising. This causes most astrologers to believe that his birth time is very accurate, and he was possibly born slightly earlier, but definitely not later, to have that Leo rising, because he is the poster child of Leo. He expresses everything we think of with Leo. The strong personality, the colorful personality, the standing out in a crowd. Even his hair. Leo has a reputation for having a mane like a lion, and of course his hair is a big deal. And he has Mars rising in Leo, and he's very feisty and aggressive personality. So it just fits beautifully. And sometimes the astrology is like this. You look at the chart, you look at the person, obvious, clear, perfect match. It makes perfect sense. So to get an image of Leo, Donald Trump is one example of it. Any colorful character, a person with a lot of personal charisma. So Leo likes to be the center of attention, has a strong personality, stands out in a crowd, is a leader. They're creative. Also, Leo is sincere and loyal, and brings a ray of sunshine wherever he or she goes. Now, the negative sides of Leo, they tend to be self-absorbed, arrogant, and always bringing the conversation around to themselves. And any zodiac sign, as I said before, can be positive or it can be negative. So those are some of the positive and negative tendencies of Leo. And Leo is easy to identify because they're such colorful individuals. And in our database, in the Sirius software, of over 20,000 people with birth times from a birth certificate or birth record, what we call AA accuracy, we have a lot of entertainers, singers, actors, performers. We would expect some of these very colorful personalities to show up with lots of Leo among the people in the database who have many planets in Leo. Let's see if it's true. This is exciting to see if our ideas really work. They seem to work anecdotally. When we look at people in our family and our friends, astrologers say, yes, this works. This is a more kind of a controlled study where we pick out the biggest Leos out of tens of thousands of charts and see if they are these people like Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump won't be one of the strongest. He only has Leo rising and Mars in Leo and also Pluto in Leo. And what about somebody who has even more Leo? Let's see if it really works or not. Now, here they are. The top people in the database with Leo is a fellow named Eric Huckel. He's a physicist and a chemist. Well, right off the bat, that's a little bit surprising. I read some biographical information about him. Nothing about him being a charismatic or colorful personality. So a little bit odd there. The second one is Jean Honoré, who is an archbishop and cardinal in the Catholic Church. He's grayed out in this listing because I didn't find a lot of biographical information about him. Another one is George Gordon Cantlay, a general. And we'll see that Cantlay is described as having a dignity, not flamboyant, but a dignity, a strong presence, an astrologer by the name of Rainer Lemke, who did some astrology programming and things like that. I didn't get a lot of biographical information about him, so I grayed him out. And then there were a number of people in the database who scored 23, and I noticed Jean Piaget is a name I recognized. I didn't recognize the others. So I added him. He was tied for 23 with some other people. So we have our top 3. We actually have 5, but only 3 that we can get biographical information for. And a little bit of a surprise. Even though with some of the other zodiac signs, we found colorful personalities, entertainers, actors. We don't have any entertainers or actors here. We do have an archbishop and a cardinal, a general. These are commanding people, but this has actually less emphasis on the kind of Leo theatrical presence that we see with Donald Trump, but we don't see with the top people. So what's going on here? How can this be? Does the astrology only seem to work? Why does it work so well sometimes? And also, let me mention this. Years ago, I had a student in a class, and we did her boyfriend's chart. He had Leo rising, Jupiter in Leo, a Venus-Pluto conjunction in Leo, and he's one of the most humble, quiet people I've ever met. Now, the response of astrologers typically is, look at the whole chart. Well, we are looking at the whole chart, and what is it that sometimes makes the Leo obvious and sometimes not so obvious? And I think this is something we have to face. We have to face this reality. And I think the reason is because our understanding of the zodiac signs isn't quite right. Leo is not necessarily an entertainer, a charismatic, colorful personality like Donald Trump is. Sometimes it comes out differently. And what I believe, last paragraph, and this is really, really important, because if I'm right, and other people have had this idea, Dane Rudhyar, famous astrologer back 30, 40, 50 years ago, he presented this idea that zodiac signs are really phases. They're like seasons. They're stages of growth, and therefore they are a process, and they're not primarily archetypes. There are various archetypes that manifest as expressions of a process. Now, you may not like the idea that zodiac signs are a process. It might be simpler if Leo was this king. We can easily identify it, we can see it, but we don't get to decide what astrology is, and the data really does not fit the idea that Leo is consistently this archetype of a king or a queen. So here's my idea of Leo. Leo is about developing an identity. Let me explain this, we might say, from the ground up. Every moment of our waking lives, we receive a large number of sensations through our 5 senses. We see things, hear things, touch things, taste things, and smell things. So we get all of these different experiences, but we are able to assemble them instinctively and automatically into a coherent picture. We hear the bird, we visualize that it's a bird, we see the bird, everything becomes coherent. Now let's take that a step further. We ourselves have a lot of resources available to us. We have certain motivations and drives, things we want to do. We have certain skills, knowledge. We have our bodies. Some of us are tall, some of us are short, some of us are naturally athletic, some of us are not. So what we do in our lives, we take all of these things that are available to us and we mold them, and we become personalities. We become characters on a stage. Some of us are more colorful characters than others, but we all develop a personality and a character that molds together all of these separate qualities. And that process of molding and synthesizing and creatively expressing these diverse things is the process of Leo. That's what I think Leo is. It's that process of creatively blending and integrating and expressing different things into a character, into a personality. And that process does not necessarily make you regal or make you self-centered. So Donald Trump expresses one kind of Leo manifestation. But we will see with all Leo people that they're deeply involved in, you might call it the mystery, the magic, the natural process of becoming individuals, of our identities forming. And what we're going to learn also is that Leo is not always absorbed just in its own individual expression. Very often they take an interest in the whole process of developing personalities, developing character, becoming creative, expressive people. So you got it? The idea is that there's a function, a process, and this archetype of the king or queen is only one expression of it. In fact, we can think of this idea of Leo being a king or queen as a psychological process that as an image is the king or queen. We have become kings or queens of our own domain. By domain, I mean what's immediately available to us, our bodies, our skills, our talents, our drives and motivations. That's our domain. We become a king or queen, and we rule over our domain. We rule over it because we have direct access to it and other people don't. And then we creatively express that as something. That process, again, that's what I think Leo is. And it's going to make much, much more sense in our research study. And this research study is called Extreme Case Sampling. Here are 2 videos that go into the technical details and why this kind of research is so powerful and so important and gives us a fast path to understanding astrology. And here's the formula that we are using to determine who is a strong Leo. And the exact formula doesn't really matter that much, because if you have Leo rising in several planets in Leo, no matter how you score it, you're going to come out very high. Okay, I mentioned this in all, I will be mentioning it in all 12 videos of, the 12 zodiac signs. So just to briefly mention what we're doing here. All right, let's see if it works. Here are our top 3 people, the top 3 that we have biographical information for. And as I started to say, none of them have obvious Leo characteristics. Eric Huckel, he's not charismatic. He doesn't have this intriguing personality like Albert Einstein. We love to put Albert Einstein's picture up, not only because he's brilliant. There's something captivating just about his image, something mysterious or in a subtle way kind of charismatic, I think. Well, Eric Huckel doesn't seem to have that. So what is the Leo? He's certainly not an entertainer. He's a scientist. And Cantley, well, I'll show you Cantley's chart real quickly. Here's all this Leo. Sun, let's see, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, all in Leo. Leo rising, and Jupiter's rising in Leo. We just saw the example of Mars rising in Leo in Donald Trump's chart. This is even closer conjunction, about a degree. Jupiter on the ascendant. So Jupiter rising in Leo. If Donald Trump has this aggressive personal expression because his Mars rising in Leo, we might think this Jupiter rising in Leo would lead to a highly colorful, expressive personality. But Cantley's more dignified, and maybe that's the 12th house, is what a lot of astrologers are going to argue. That's making it more subdued, but this emphasis on his dignity and not a colorful personality is quite interesting. Okay, and what I'm interested in with astrology is, can we see the person before we know about them? After we find out what Cantley is like, we can rationalize it. We can figure out a reason. But would I look at his chart and see the way he is? That you might say is my goal, that the astrology chart can really give us information. It seems like the zodiac signs come out in so many different ways, it's hard to predict exactly what will happen. Sometimes it's obvious, like with Donald Trump, sometimes not so obvious. And the reason I think that is true is because there are beautiful, intricate planetary patterns that tell us what the real talent and motivation of the person is. I talk about that in other videos. And the zodiac signs tell us the style, the quality, the orientation of what they do. The zodiac signs tend not to give us that much information about what the person does. So he takes a Leo approach to science. Eric Huckel. Cantlay takes a Leo approach to being a general. So what the person does, I think, is more in the aspects. The style and approach is affected strongly by signs. So given that Cantlay is a general, he is a general in a Leo way when we think about what the Leo process is. So figuring out how astrology works and if astrology works, I think is a bit tricky, you might say. And I think that some of the popular ideas and some of the ideas embraced by many astrologers, we can improve upon this. We can step up our game. We can improve our astrology by looking at the data more carefully and what's going on. And Piaget also, the biographical information does not appear to emphasize the strong, colorful personality and so on. So the data does not, the data indicates that these people are not consistently colorful personalities like a Donald Trump is, where the Leo is more obvious. So here's my interpretation of Leo, as I said before, synthesizing experiences into a creative integrated whole. Leo is I'm reading from the second paragraph. Leo is acutely, when I say Leo, be a person with a lot of planets in Leo, not just the sun. A lot of Leo, emphasis in the chart. Leo is acutely aware of its individuality and the opportunity to make something of himself or herself with what is available. Individual development, and that can be other people's development as well as your own. That's one of the key issues. I do not believe that Leo is consistently self-centered. Why do I believe that? Well, back in the 1970s, I interviewed thousands of people. That was my observation. This research confirms it again. Leo is about the formation of identity, and sometimes they're just absorbed with their own self-development. Other times they develop an interest in anyone's self-development. The whole process of becoming an individual, a productive, successful individual. And Leo is self-conscious. That can lead to pride. Now, here's a surprise for many astrologers. It can lead to shyness. I've seen this over and over again, that this concern about developing one's full potential also can be self-critical. So you'll get different traits, different characteristics, depending on how the person is dealing with this process of individuation, of integrating all of their resources into a creative expression. So let's look at each one of these individuals. Okay, Eric Huckel, let's look at his chart. Okay, there's Eric Huckel, Leo rising, Sun and Moon in Leo, triple Leo. This is going to be less than 1 out of 1,000 people will be a triple Leo. And he has two other inner planets, Mercury and Venus in Leo, and Jupiter in Leo. Wow. And it's all in the first house. Holy moly, you can't get much more Leo than that. South Node also happens to be in Leo, conjunct as Venus and Mercury. Who would have thought that he will be a scientist? Well, that's what he is. He is a scientist. There we go. Just reducing that down. I saw a little scroll bar there. Okay, so if we look at this and we think Leo is a personally expressive person, you might think an artist, an actor. No, he's a scientist, and I think that is in the aspect patterns. But he does his science in a Leo way. Let me show you what I mean by doing it in a Leo way. What I mean is a personal creative approach to it. Okay, who was Huckel? This is taken from a biography by Andreas Karachalios, who wrote a biography about Eric Huckel. I didn't buy the book. It's a very expensive book, and read the whole thing, but I went to Amazon.com, clicked on the look inside, and read some of the summary information about him. And a few things we know about Eric Huckel is he was a pioneer in quantum chemistry. I also read other things, Wikipedia articles and a few other articles about him. So he was a pioneer in quantum chemistry. This is a field that applies quantum physics to chemistry. So at the time he was living and working as a scientist, you had quantum physics, you had chemistry, and he blended them by applying quantum physics ideas to chemistry and was a pioneer in the development of quantum chemistry. This is the kind of creative, whole integrated approach you often see with Leo. Now, number two, he became involved in a very heated controversy with Linus Pauling. Probably you've heard of Linus Pauling more than Eric Huckel. Great physicist Linus Pauling. So they had a controversy, and especially Huckel, you might say, had a big controversy with Pauling over a theory regarding the benzene ring. Now, you may think, holy moly, the benzene ring, how do these guys get so personally involved and emotional to get over a big dispute over science, some scientific thing? Well, that's what Leo does. Whatever it does, it takes a personal approach. It becomes personally involved in a creative approach to whatever it does. And if Leo thinks that there's some disrespect, not appreciating an idea, overlooking a personal contribution, Leo will become, you might say, agitated by that. It wants to be able to fully express what it finds, and it takes it personally. So we see some hints of Leo. We don't, everything I read does not indicate strong Leo characteristics. I do believe that he probably was pretty self-conscious. He might have been a little bit critical, perhaps shy, sensitive about his appearance in some way. Probably could be, what's the word I want to look for? Feel overlooked or disrespected easily. He probably did have some of these Leo characteristics, but it's not obvious and pervading his entire life, because his life is about science and whatever other interests he has, and he takes a Leo approach to it. If we don't come to this conclusion, how do we explain all this Leo in Eric Huckel's chart and still preserve any belief in the idea of Leo? What do we do about the boyfriend of one of my students in a class who had all of this intense Leo, kind of similar to this, with all this emphasis on Leo in the first house, and he was so quiet, so humble. Humility, and actually, in his case, interest in a spiritual path with a guru, heroes, gurus. This is the Leo way of often they have heroes or gurus because of that personal magnificence that they're aware that the human being is capable of. Leo is just not always consistently colorful, dynamic kings and queens. Now here's Jean Honoré. We're not going to look very much at his chart because I couldn't get much biographical information, so it's very difficult to evaluate. He was a Catholic priest. He was an archbishop and a cardinal. That certainly is a regal position. However, there are other archbishops and cardinals who don't have a lot of Leo, but we don't have a lot of biographical information about him, so I didn't use him in the study. Now, Cantlay. I showed you Cantlay's chart. There it is again, that Jupiter rising in Leo, Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Neptune in Leo. How does his Leo come out? Well, here's a statement about him from this website, westpointaog.org. Cantlay's quiet competence proved to be a lifetime hallmark and the foundation of his strong leadership talents. Okay, leadership talents. He's a general, but he's got a quiet competence. Why is it quiet when Jupiter's rising in Leo? Well, you might say the 12th house would be one possibility. George moved smoothly through the academy as a good student and athlete, graduated in the upper quarter of the class. George Cantlay exemplified, quote, soldier, unquote, by his personal demeanor and his combat record in 13 campaigns. So his demeanor, he has this quiet competence, this integrity that just emanates from him. He's a commanding personality. So that's one form of Leo that he develops. He integrates all these qualities into a high level of expression. So Leo can become charismatic because they're artists of their life. They orchestrate their energies into a beautiful character. So George believed a commander should be in the field with his troops, and that is just where he could be found. He felt a really good officer takes care of his subordinates and trains them for advancement. Now, that is, in my opinion, extreme Leo. Where's the extreme Leo? Takes care of his subordinates and trains them for advancement. The interest in the individual development, in people becoming all that they can be. They have that expression in the American military, be all that you can be. This idea of developing yourself personally, gaining control of your resources, and becoming the best that you can be and shine as an individual, that's the essence of Leo. And it does not necessarily mean you are a colorful personality. It means that you've mastered the energies available to you, and you've developed them into high character. So he emanates high character, and he trains his subordinates for advancement. Now, this is a summary of the main things that somebody researching this could find about Cantley. It's one of his main characteristics. So Leo does not tell you that what a person does. We don't have entertainers in our list of strong Leos, but what we have is people focused on the importance of developing yourself as an individual. Now you might say, doesn't everybody want to do that? Well, not the main interest of everybody. Taurus is listening and unfolding. Gemini is curious about what's around it. Cancer is building a protective egg around itself. So all 12 signs are important, and they're all essential for healthy development. But people with a lot of Leo are focused more on that aspect of life. They're in that season, in that phase of development where that's highlighted for them. So as a general, he's helping train people under him to become commanders of their own energy, and he's commanding himself. That emphasis on personal integrity and development is infused into his life as a general. That's the Leo. It's more subtle. It's not always like a Donald Trump with the long blonde hair and the charisma. It comes out in different ways. The Donald Trump kind of expression of Leo is only one possibility. And the quiet competence with Jupiter rising in Leo, if we go with the Leo as being a colorful personality, Jupiter rising in Leo, even with the 12th house, you'd have to assume the houses completely overpower the Jupiter rising. In astrology, we believe these cardinal points, like the rising, are very important. It's a little more difficult of an argument, but if we realize that we can't get too much out of zodiac signs, the main emphasis of what a person's talents are and their motivations is in the aspects. The signs are going to just tell us the style in which they do things, and his style is very, very Leo. Now, excuse me, Jean Piaget, this is interesting. Interest in personal development. His career is about personal development. He is a child psychologist studying how people grow to become healthy, productive, and constructive adults. So this whole process of individuation, of developing our individual characters and becoming productive and constructive people, is what his life work is about. So here we have a person whose interest is psychology, and he takes a Leo approach to psychology, which becomes the interest in the personal development of the individual. So sometimes the zodiac signs do impact the career. In fact, they almost always do, but it's more subtle than we think. There's something individual something creative, something about personal development, and it's very clear with Cantlay, helping people, these soldiers, become commanders, kings and queens over their domain, to be all that they can be, and Piaget doing it as a child psychologist. So again, we are unable to be very specific with our interpretation of zodiac signs. And that's the way it is with zodiac signs. For scientific research, aspects work much better. Aspects, in other tutorial videos, I show how aspects, midpoint structures, these relationship of distances between the planets do show us more clearly what the behavior, motivation, and talent is. Zodiac signs are much more difficult to pinpoint. They're much more difficult in any kind of research, because it's telling you something about a style, an approach to whatever is indicated by the aspects and by their life experiences. So we're seeing something consistently related to personal creativity and self-expression in the lives of these people. And again, not always just themselves, but sometimes an interest in self-development in general. And that's clear with Piaget, that's clear with Cantlay, and that was clear to me in the 1970s. All the way back in the 70s, when I was interviewing people, I saw this over and over and over again. It kind of mystified me how other astrologers were not seeing that Leo is sometimes shy. Leo is sometimes involved in the personal development of other people, not just themselves. And so this research, which is now possible today, which I could only dream of in my wildest imagination, might be possible someday, we're now doing, where we can actually pull out these strongest people, do this extreme case sampling, much more rigorous way of finding out what the zodiac signs mean, and it validates this approach. Unfortunately, zodiac signs do not give us as much detail and clarity of information as we might have hoped. That's more in the aspects. But they are important because they're going to tell us something about the quality and style of the person. And I'm going to make videos in the future about relocational astrology, about relationships, and how zodiac signs become very important in personal relationships, areas like relocational astrology, where the approach and attitude is very important. So, my last slide, we're at the end here. Just to summarize, Leo, like the other zodiac signs, does not indicate what a person does, but rather the attitude and style with which a person does things. That's what I'm suggesting. That's what I'm suggesting the evidence indicates. Zodiac signs are difficult to study with quantitative research methods. Leo gives the need to be self-expressive and to develop one's talents as an individual. Leo may also take an interest in the development of other people, as with Jean Piaget, also with General Cantlay. And aspects indicate the behavior and indicate more precisely and clearly what the person's talents, motivations, and interests are, as I've explained, particularly in the videos on vibrational astrology. Okay, my friends, there you have it. I think this is really important. If you're a practicing astrologer and you're relying on Leo being this colorful personality, I think you can do much better consultations, much better analysis by thinking of the zodiac signs as phases, as a process, and I've described the process of Leo, and you'll find that this is consistently helpful with your clients, and it will work consistently. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.